Hey guys, this is Segef with Frontlinetactic, and today there was the Kenshi AMA conversation. And in the background, I just have a little bit of a playthrough that I was doing. But I wanted to go over some of the highlights and some of the questions that were asked that really popped out and caught my attention. We'll just start off with the one that I popped off. I said, with the talk of Kenshi 2, will there be the exact same landmass, but before the fall of the Empire? Or will there be more areas to explore? Chris said, it's going to be the same landmass, but changed and also hopefully expanded by 50%. That was a neat idea. Sorry, I just spilled my coffee. That was a neat idea, expanded by 50%, and it got me thinking. It's like, well, how would it be the same landmass, but extended? And so I did a follow-up question. I'm taking it that you're referring to lower sea levels, because that's the only way you can expand landmass without actually getting new landmass, is the sea level would be lower. And I also further added that there was an interesting mod that I saw once in the Steam that implemented a cave system. I asked if he was going to implement ever an underground level system, just like how multiple floors do in building. He said going under the train has a lot of technical issues, mainly with the camera. You will see this, what I mean, with the dome buildings in the Ashland. And I kind of agreed with him on that, because it gets kind of janky when you get into those. Another individual asked, what was the inspiration for Beep? Where did you expect him to become a fan favorite? Chris said it started just as an idea for an NPC and would really easy to write because of these dialogue events could just be beep in quotes. Then for some reason he just started to come to life in my head and I just kept coming up with more ideas. I wrote most of this stuff in one day, quietly chuckling to myself the entire time. I thought that was pretty funny. Which then there was another question. Because Natalie, his sister, does a lot of his the writing and dialogue for the game. Was Beep the number one, the 1% of the writing that Nat didn't do? Nat responds, basically, yeah, I'm not sore about it at all. Chris then went on to say, I also wrote the crab tournament, but that didn't seem to go off as well. And then someone followed up, I suppose Beep is easy to reach and all, while the crab tournament, you really have to go to the southeast. It's really hard to get to. Another person asked, Kenshi was inspired by the stories of traveling Ronin, according to a Wikipedia post. Can you give us a few specific examples of books, stories, etc.? Chris went on to say Seven Samurai, which is a classic, which completely makes sense. Kung Fu films and Mad Max. I also love Malazan books, and the sheer depth of history the world building is astounding. Dark Souls for the way it embeds history, lore, and sense of wonder into the world using barely any words. Nat went on to also follow up with, for the writing, I don't really think of any specific books, but Skyrim, Fallout, old and new, stories really inspired me. I play a lot of the bigger RPGs too, like Dragon Age and The Witcher. They can all have quite dark sides and gray areas to them, which always intrigues me. I love to try to include that kind of thing whenever I can in Kenshi. What else? A person asked about adding more things, making the game more dynamic, and I thought Chris's response was really interesting. The more dynamic a game gets, the more unstable it becomes. The game world is already pretty unstable. Like when the hordes of spiders wipe out towns, dynamic economies are a nightmare to balance. Imagine playing for a few in-game weeks and finding out the United Cities now own every town. Cool at first, then exploration becomes boring. Maybe you never get the chance to visit certain factions. Mount & Blade, for example, apparently had an artificial limit to place to stop any factions from being defeated or taking over the world. There was some kind of checks and balance. With that said, I do want to take a look at making faction warfare more dynamic in the next game. This other person made a comment about stealing, which he referred to it that made stealing almost like spoils the game. It's fun, but kind of spoils the game. Will you do something about it in Kenshi 2 or leave it as it is? Chris said stealing in games unbalance the gameplay by nature, and that's what makes it fun. He goes on and makes more analogies of the consequences and kind of get rich quick. He went on and made a post comment about, someone asked about the details of Kenshi 2. He said, yes, it's something like 1,000 years before the first game. The content is being secret. We are working on a new secret engine for Kenshi 2 and hoping to be able to port it over to Kenshi 1 as well. Kenshi 1 port is a lot of extra work though. It depends on the engine mobility. Because most of the game is coded in C++, it can't be modded, but that's the way we can get a seamless world with 800 plus characters running around at any time. I didn't realize that Kenshi had that kind of a population running around at any given time. That's kind of huge. I'm surprised that the engine doesn't break more often. Alright, last one that I kind of pulled that caught my attention. Chris, I just want to say I love Kenshi and I have been following it for a long, long time. What is your strategy when you start a new game? Do you sit in town and build up tech and characters, then go out and find a spot to your own base, or do you do more exploring at the beginning, or something completely different? Chris Hunt goes on to say, I usually trade and wander and get into scraps. I think that's the most fun way to play. I frown upon mining as an income source. In the future, I might make it harder, like rival miners or town guards demanding rival miners or town guards demanding you have a mining license or something. That actually adds a really cool, like, further economic and taxation part of the game. And almost, because it's going to be old world with the old empire, it gives it almost a bureaucratic feel, which makes it more civilized, so to speak. Well, guys, that's all I kind of wanted to do, is just kind of go over some of the high points that I kind of like found this morning during the AMA with Chris and Nat. I'll try to do more Kenshi stuff in the future. I've been wanting to get back into it. I've been slowly getting back into things. But, yeah, stay safe on the front line. Bye.